Okay, class. This is going to be a step by step of drawing and also coloring a painting or a drawing. This is digital. We're working on Sketchbook, working with mostly the pencil tool and the blur tool or smudge pen, they call it, and the eraser. I'm also going to keep layers for different parts of the sketch. And one of the first layers is going to be just a grayscale background. The next layer I'm going to have here is going to be the blocking stage. The photograph I'm looking at is it has a cup, a plate. On the plate, we have sweetbread, Mexican sweetbread, pan dulce. We have tangerine, one whole and one that is torn apart on top of a table. So no background really, and just gonna keep it as clean as possible. In this first layer, the blocking layer is just going to be a simple, rough sketch of what's in the image. I have cup, plate. I want to pay special attention to the dimensions of things here, how big one item is versus another. And I can make as many mistakes as I want here because I can always get rid of the layer and start again. I want to really pay attention to where things are in relationship to each other and get to know and get to understand their spatial relationship. Spatial as in where things are and how big or small they are in proportion to each other. Also paying attention to shadows and where light is coming from. This tangerine is sort of in the center here. And then I have another tangerine here. And the peel, torn pieces of that peel, and the sweet bread behind it. So it will get modified, but this is about as much detail I need in this initial part of the drawing as I make corrections here in the last part of this initial drawing. And if I make new findings, for example, I'm finding out the endpoints right here, I'd rather make them now and make them clean versus being stuck with a drawing that I don't get to use and have to start over again. Okay, I'm gonna leave it alone here. And I'm gonna lock this layer down because I'm gonna add a second layer. Now this second layer is going to be my outline layer. So I have an outline layer. This is going to have a little bit more intensity, a thinner line, more intensity in like the darkness of the line work. And I'm going to start in one area here. I'm going to make my way around looking at all of the contour edges, viewing as much as I can everywhere, and then coming right back to where I started. That's what I'm going to do here. So in my photograph, I have the ability to zoom in a little bit on my photo and be okay with it. And that's pretty cool. So I'm gonna start. No shading, just keeping it as tight as possible with the drawing without slowing down too much. I want to keep a good pace here for the contour. Again, no shading, just looking up, recording information, looking down. If I find reflections and shadows that are very noticeable, I can include those now, or I can include them later. Kind of up to each artist. I have to constantly look up and remind myself of where I am in the artwork and the drawing. I pay also a good amount of attention to negative spaces. Negative spaces are important here. And again, making corrections is important. In some cases, I tried my best not to zoom in too much because if I zoom in too much, I run the risk of forgetting my place in the drawing. Now I'm finding out I drew some items too large, so I'm making the corrections now. For the most part, drawings will tighten up and, in a way, shrink a little bit after more and more observation. And it's okay to do that because it's what we see, and how that is seen as how we intend to draw it. Again, you don't need all of the detail yet. You do need a fair amount of close observation. No shading, just really close observation. If you find it difficult to focus, one thing you can do is to remind yourself that this is practice. Um, just like working out, just like playing music or anything that takes practice, you can think about it that way, that we're looking to just practice, and it's nothing more than that. You do want to do a good job, and as a coach, I like to tell students that we practice the way we want to play the game. If you want to play the game with only a little bit of intensity, you can do that. You can do that, but not always going to give you the best results. So you want to practice the way that you're going to play the game with some urgency, with some intensity, but also the game is meant to be played with fun. Lots of fun. So enjoy your time. The overlapping, in some cases, I'm seeing some overlapping. I want to include that here now and make corrections because, again, you don't have the luxury to make that many corrections later on. I'm trying to fight the urge to shade or to get into too much detail. Don't get into too much detail just yet. Also, the eraser is your friend here, so don't be afraid of using it. And fight the urge to erase. Just keep the line drawing going. Line drawing. Okay. I'm almost done with this. This should take, I don't know, 10 to 12 minutes to get a decent, strong, usable outline into your drawing. Something you can work with and that you're happy with. I may have bitten too much off here. I may have chosen items that are a little too involved, but that's okay. I'm gonna have to work it out anyways and challenge myself. Okay, now you can see the first drawing and now the second drawing having a little bit more detail. And like that, I'm having a slightly more finished drawing that I can begin to add some details to. Again, I'm not trying to rush too much, but I don't want to let this sit without getting some of this really done. Okay. If something doesn't work out, just erase it, draw it again. Okay, so here's my second layer. I'm going to lock this one as well. The next step is I'm going to begin to shade. A lot of kids will say shade, and I'm saying shade, but what I mean by that is I'm going to begin to introduce values into the drawing. Values as in lights, mediums, and darks into the work here. Why did I draw that line right through everything? Because I wanted to make sure that it lined up. That this horizon line lined up. And that's one way to do that. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to start adding values in this third layer. And Here I can get to do a lot of squinting. A lot of squinting will help me define where shadows are beginning to take shape and where other shadows are ending. I'm going to start by using the grayscale here on the side. I'm going to start with a light to medium. I'm going to start with a pretty medium value. And I'm just going to start adding some of this shading. Here I'm going to start from the center and work my way out. That's just one way to do it. You can start from the bottom up, work your way up, or you can start from the top, left to right. As long as you're organized, you can begin to introduce values here fairly quickly. Starting with shadows for some reason, but you can also start adding some values to the different items. And start to define the highlights. You can start defining highlights because obviously they don't have shadows, but they usually highlights will have some sort of indication of shadow next to them because they're light. So some contrast. This software, the Sketchbook software, is very good in a lot of what Photoshop is good at, but because this is on a Chromebook or a tablet, it almost feels like a piece of paper. And you can control the tool that you're drawing with. I have a stylus, a little pen, digital pen, that helps me out a lot. It really feels like I'm using a regular pencil. It feels good when you can change the modes, the tools, and the settings for those tools. It really helps. Like here, I need to fill this whole space, and that would be one way to do it. But I can change the opacity and the size, and then I can cover some more areas here. Okay, now that's like my medium values, and now I'm going to get into some slightly darker values and push those in. A lot of darker values are on this mug. Very, very dark values. If you feel inclined to just go straight into the dark darks, go ahead. But I would say take it easy and work your way towards that darker value as you go along, instead of just jumping straight into all of your dark values, and work your way up to that. I would say start including some of those dark darks. Wherever you see them, start including them. Nothing's final, everything is still a work in progress. So don't be afraid of attempting to draw a part here. You don't have to fear, oh, I ruined my work. No, there's no such thing. You can always fix it, you can always erase it or undo with this software. So it's super good. Again, I'm still looking for darks, mediums, and lights. Defining edges if I need to. Now I'm going to start zooming in on some of these intricate little areas because I need it. Having to look up and squint, capture some of those. Mm-hmm. Again, you can still make really light value changes. And if you want, if you feel comfortable enough, you can also begin to smudge, but I I stay away from that until later. But feel free to use your own judgment there. Okay, moving into a darker value now. Still looking for the darks. And like I said, if you find I made something too large or too small, compositionally not correct, this is the chance to fix it before you've done too much work. And you can save yourself a lot of time by fixing it earlier rather than letting it snowball into a larger problem, larger fix that you would have to do. Here, the skill of hatching and cross hatching comes in handy. That's when you have parallel lines in sequence next to each other in a sort of pattern to fill an area really quickly and evenly. And then cross hatching where you feel like you need more of that darker value. So with this darker value, I'm going to zoom into a part of my photo and kind of allow myself to spend the time here on this. So many times we don't give ourselves the time to do things with patience and attention to detail. Here's their chance. No one's going to rush you. No one's going to force you to do anything you don't want to do. You just work at your own pace. Allow yourself that time. Again, every time I do something, I'm looking up. Looking up. Okay, and I'm going to go back over this with a light value, and I'm going to bring up some highlights where I think I'm going to need them. And still in this layer, another thing I can do is smudge. The smudge tool starts to make things real nice for you. modify your tools the way you want them to be. You'll get to see sometimes the pressure is different, the width of the line is different. So you modify them and change them as you need for your purpose. I have to remind myself to look up every so often. It's important because I'm working objectively. There's an objective I need to meet. I need to be honest in what I'm seeing and how I'm recording it on the paper. So if I make a mistake, I gotta be the first one to identify it and improve upon it. Moving on to this tangerine. I could spend more time on each item, but we want to be good with our time here and move around the drawing. Don't get stuck in one place for too long. Okay, now I'm looking for the lights in the photograph. So as soon as I see something, I'm gonna mark it down and just start it. With values, we're looking for darks, the lights, and we can see them here very clearly, reflecting off of this piece of bread. Mm-hmm. Got that right there. More highlights over here. Here with this cup, I'm gonna find a very clear highlight on the rim around the cup. Find that as quickly as I can so it really solidifies this three-dimensional form in space. Real solid forming there. Same thing with any of the reflections on the opposite side. And I could be a lot cleaner with this, but I also know I can make my corrections later. I just want to get this impression of the shapes on this cup real quick. The handle also presents a highlight here, and the background, as opposed to the table, the background here has a bit of white in it. We have more white on this side than anywhere else. So I'm gonna bump up the intensity there and the size. You can blend that later. I'm gonna leave it right there for now. And use this right here. See how this works like a piece of paper? It's very nice. Very nice, very nice. Now, just to demonstrate the smudge tool, I'm going to blend that background a little bit. It really does a good job of blending things in. So pencil and then smudge. Okay. So there's the under drawing. I have a lot more to go and I can continue with this quite a bit. But I'm going to move on into the color part of it. And I'm going to start with this really nice tangerine in the center and its partner over here. I'm going to put all these colors in a different layer as well because I just want to separate my work. If I make a mistake, it's not on the same page. If I do this, I can always delete it. Okay. So I'm going to look up at that tangerine, just the tangerine, and I'm going to look for color. What is the hue family or the color family that it belongs to? I'm just going to give it a big covering of that with a low intensity. Just begin that process. The closer you get that to the real thing, the better, but not always going to be perfect. So you might want to try again. I'm going to try here again. I'm going to leave it there. And I'll leave it right there. So the next thing is I'm going to start peppering this with different colors that I see on it. And that means sometimes I have to bring down the opacity to make a good blend happen. You can smudge as much as you like here too. And you can modify the color as much as you like as well. I'm going to start bringing down the size here. Now from here, you can start getting a bit of the darker values of color by throwing it into the gray area in the swatches here. Not much, but just enough to begin differentiating areas from each other. Being careful not to make a big change or too sudden of a change if I don't see it. And spending some good quality time with this item. Now I'm really going to start messing around with highlights and shadows, and I'm not going to really move too much from this swatch here, from this square. I'm going to keep it in this square for now, for at least a little while. Remind myself to look up. I gotta look up. And if I fill up an area that I don't intend, bring it back. This is where we start to see the three-dimensional part of it. And again, if I feel like I need that color brilliancy back, I can bring it right back. That color intensity has to be here when we need it. I keep tripping this eraser, but just go for it here. There's a lot of brilliant color right in this space right here. Get it, look up. See right here. You'll see when I introduce the white or the highlights into this, it's going to really make it pop. It's almost happening already, but not quite yet, not yet. Okay. Okay, so now I feel like I'm gonna be ready for that brilliant color, but I'll bring this down a little bit. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look for the brights here, and I'm gonna zoom in even more. I mean, a lot. Get that special sort of tighter view. Now we're getting down into the pores. the pores of the skin of the tangerine. I know this may be a little too detailed for a lot of folks, but this is what we want. We want good work. You can go into an area and then fill it with the little grains of skin tone or texture, if you want to think about it that way. And I don't know if you can see that on yours, but I'm going to hit it with some points. Some areas it gets really dark, others not so much. Without making this look like a big polka dotted thing, I'm going to just include some of that texture around where I really feel like I need it. And I can go back to it later, but I'm going to kind of stop with that one. Now, if I take that color away, that's what it looks like. With a bit more help, it's going to start to get pretty serious later. And that's basically the gist of it, right? We're observing, we're pulling in color, we're modifying the color. There may be, within one tangerine, there may be 20, 30 different colors, variations of the same color. And you can do the same for every part of the artwork. I'm going to continue working on this, and I'll show you some of the results.